What's your if I'm going down I'm taking you with me story? I was rock climbing, and this guy who was my belayer for the day was kinned off a dick. Well, no surprise. Dickwad spends most of his time flirting with a cute girl who is friendly, but seriously not into him. He gets chewed out by our lead for not paying attention, which means he continues to not pay attention as he is incapable of picking up cues. Well, there's me, 25 feet or so off the ground with my rope slack, and feeling my hand slipping because I'm just running out of steam. Now, having told him 3 times to pick up the slack, I look down and see he's completely ignoring me to chat with this girl again. My mistake was looking down as I reached to readjust my weakening hold and slip. The rope shoots out of his limp, sausage-like fingers and I began to fall. I know a properly tied off rope shouldn't do that. I don't know how he freaked that up too. My only thought is, if I'm going to fall, I'll damn well land on him. Well, I did. I landed straight on his cushy, asshole body. I was barely injured. He was taken to hospital after having 80 odd kilos land on him from 2 stories up. I never happened to see him at that rock climbing club again. My grandma lived on a main road in Miami. She had grapefruit trees in her yard that grew huge grapefruits. When I was little, my older brothers taught me to roll the grapefruits out into traffic and watch them splat as the cars drove by. They couldn't see where the fruits were coming from because we hid behind the bushes to launch them. It was kinda like reverse Frogger. The goal was to get a good splat. When I was 15, grandma's health was declining, so my family stayed at her house for a couple days to get it cleaned out and ready to sell. I decided it would be fun to take my younger brothers out and show them grapefruit splat. After about 10 minutes of us hurling double-digit grapefruits out into traffic, one of us rolled a big, fat grapefruit right in front of a cop car without paying attention. We all ran to the backyard, but when I looked out front, my youngest brother Barry was still out there. Apparently he froze up. I come walking up hurriedly to the police officers and tried to play it off. "What seems to be the problem, officer?" I asked. "Who are you, and where are this boy's parents?" he asked. I replied, "I'm his older brother. My parents are at the grocery store, so I'm babysitting until they get back." The cop was super chill and goes, "Okay, well, your brother was rolling grapefruits out into traffic, so we just stopped to explain to him why that's dangerous." I looked over to Barry and winked to let him know that we were about to be off the hook, and I said to the cop, "I'm so sorry, I'll make sure to have a talk with him, and it won't happen again." Well, freaking Barry misread my wink as a taunt, so he looks up at the cops and goes, "He's the one who showed us how to do it. He ran away when you stopped. And my dad's not gone, he's inside." The cop looks down at me with a huge grin and says, "Let's go see dad." I proceeded to get into trouble for bringing my brothers into something dangerous, then grounded for lying to the cops. I had a group project I had to do with 4 other people. 3 out of the 4 were great, but there were roles each of us had to fill in the group for the project to work right. The final girl never once participated in the project, so her role was completely empty and it was dragging the rest of us down. We couldn't just fill in for her either because she kept her specific instructions to herself. The other 3 and I did the best we could, but our instructor didn't seem impressed. He had a few questions about how we came to our conclusion and who did what in the group. The other 3 were trying to keep focus on the roles they filled, but the instructor was asking about the role that the one girl skipped out on. I answered that we didn't have anything from that role because what's her ass didn't come to any of the project sessions. We just did what we could without her. Until that point, the girl that didn't do shit was standing there acting like she deserved any of the grade we all got. Once I said something, the other 3 girls confirmed that yes, Becca's ass did 0% of the work. She tried to say she was just really busy, but another girl shut her down by saying she saw her at several parties the past couple weeks. That girl got a 0 and the rest of us got like an 85 or around that number. I felt like a snitch, but fuck that girl. When I was in 8th grade, we had to create a presentation on a book we had just read, including a skit from one of the scenes. Here's the best part, we were forced to work in groups. Being an introvert, I hate group work. What I hate even more is when your group mates don't do their work. The day we were assigned the project, we decided to divvy up the slides equally. It was a Google Slides, so we could all contribute to the same document. The class ended, and I had already finished one of my slides. One boy only changed the color of the title, and the other two didn't do anything. 2 days later, I had finished all of my slides. Nobody else had done anything. I offered to start the script for the skit, since I had finished, and asked for the others to contribute. Nothing. A couple more days passed, I had finished the skit as well, and all of the other slides were still empty. Finally, the night before the assignment was due came. I had hoped that even a title had been added. The slides were still empty. I finally decided to just finish it myself. I was up until about midnight, and the slides were not the best quality. Finally, presentation day comes. Of course, my group mates felt absolutely no remorse for doing no work. It was our turn to present, and my group mates nominated me to present. I finally decided to show them the consequences of their actions. I told them that we were all to present the slides we were supposed to work on. They obviously didn't know what they were doing, and were extremely unprepared. My grade went down, but theirs went down even more. When I worked as a case manager as an MHMR, we had a new department supervisor come in, and she was the worst. Every single person but myself and another case manager quit within the month of this woman starting. I really liked my job, and it was also my internship site for my master's degree, so I needed to stay employed there. Since so many people quit, this lady got permission to hire, and it soon became obvious that she wanted to get rid of anyone she hadn't hired and have a department full of people she had personally chosen. Surprise, surprise, most of her hires were shitty just like her. On top of being an awful human, she also had very little background in mental health and gave truly awful supervision when it came to clients and getting them the services they needed. Since I wasn't a part of the people she had hired, I knew she would try to get rid of me, so I made sure to document everything. Anytime I staffed a client with her, I would document her advice in that person's chart as well as the actions I took due to her advice. I also kept a detailed paper trail and would email her questions about policy so that I'd have record of her answers, which usually were the opposite of what our policy actually was. She even started walking to my desk to verbally give me answers to the questions I sent via email, and I'd have to make up some excuses to why I needed her answer in an email. Like I would tell her a parent or client had asked, and I wanted to be able to give them a verbatim answer. I could tell she hated it. Anyway, several months later, I staffed a client with her who I believed needed to be hospitalized and wanted to run it by her first as she demanded. The kid was suicidal, homicidal, and impulsive, which is a recipe for disaster. She disagreed that this kid needed hospitalization and told me to refer the client to another agency because apparently the client was too high risk for us but didn't need to be hospitalized. I tried to get her to agree to just calling crisis to assess her, but she denied that as well. I documented what she told me to do and referred out. Well, literally a day later, this kid brings a gun to school and gets in a ton of trouble, obviously. Thankfully he was stopped as soon as he stepped through the metal detectors. Mom is pissed that my agency just referred him out and didn't get him the help he needed, and a day later he plans to shoot up his school. My supervisor's supervisor is pissed as this is a PR nightmare and comes down on my supervisor, but since I was the direct care staff assigned to this client, my supervisor blamed it all on me. I ended up getting fired for my negligence. However, the higher up of course carefully went through this kid's records and saw all of my documentation regarding the awful decisions my supervisor had made, which lead the higher up to investigate even more. Basically there was Medicaid fraud being committed. This lady was lying about her mileage and being reimbursed way more than she should, and all this other lovely stuff. So she was fired as well. I was asked to come back, but freak that place and its corruption. Current job, previous manager. I was on a team of 2, and when the lady I worked alongside with quit, they decided not to replace her. I have a young child, who as children so often do, gets sick a lot. Being the only person on my team, and the most important role for our office to function, since it is literally the first step in all our processes, I had a very hard time whenever I used my PTO with short notice. I had given my manager multiple ways to fix the issue, but she never would hear any of it. She also was in a remote office, so she had zero clue what I did with my day. She finally sent me a very angry email basically telling me I could not use my PTO for emergencies all the time when my son got sick. I wrote back a long detailed list of every method I suggested to fix the issue, along with the fact that I was the only person in my position for months, and that our company policy states in bold letters that using PTO because you or your loved one is sick is not only acceptable, but encouraged. My manager responded to my email by stating she would forward my concerns to HR and that I should probably polish up my resume, but ours was in our office that day for the first time in 6 months. Great coincidence, right? So I went in, asked if I could speak about an issue concerning my manager, and explained everything as it happened. The HR rep had this look on her face, like she was going to murder someone. She asked me to forward the entire email chain to her, which I did. Then she called me back to talk to her. A few people I talked to were aware that the manager and I had issues, and the lead of every team in our office basically told the HR rep that the entire office can't function without me, and that I've been doing the work of 3 people for 9 months. Later that day, my manager sent me a very angry message over email basically saying I was fired, and that I was to pack my things immediately for failing to do my job, and because I was causing a hostile work environment. I forwarded this to HR rep and then walked to her office and asked if I should pack my stuff. She looked at me and in a single sweet sentence said not a chance, she's royally freaked. And that's basically how my manager went from making $80k a year to being fired on a Wednesday with no compensation, no benefits, and no way to collect unemployment. All around a productive day. My uncle used to own a hardware store in our shitty little town. He wanted to put up a cover between 2 buildings that he owned, but the town council wouldn't let him. They never gave any real reason like, we need to leave the area uncovered because of his building codes. They just went on a power trip and said, you're not gonna do it. Eventually, due to some other power trips, my uncle threatened to move his shop a few towns over. Town council went all, you're not gonna do it, in a ride you way. So my uncle did just that. If I remember correctly, he paid the most in taxes, so all the money the town was getting from him disappeared. Most of his employees were in high school and couldn't drive. When he moved, the kids went with him. Since the parents had to drive their kids to their job, they decided they would also pick up groceries and other things they needed while they were in the new town. So the cloth shop and grocery store went out business. Since no one could get what they needed in our small town, just about everyone moved. Now the town is run down, and there's barely anything here. My dad said it used to be a nice little town. Now hardly anyone lives here and everything is falling in. My uncle even warned the council, if I leave I will take this town with me. But they didn't listen. I once worked for a startup company and they missed one of my paychecks. It wasn't a gigantic deal to me because they were a bit strapped for cash and we had a big release coming soon and I was decently paid anyway, so I just said freak it. They then fired me 2 days before release, making it sound like I had been inadequate despite zero indication from them that I was such before that day. So I made the proper legal arrangements to recoup my missing paycheck and told them I'd be going to labor and industry. I had already filed a complaint because if they were going to fire me after I worked 70 hours a week for over a month to try and meet their deadline out of nowhere, I sure as freak wasn't going to cut them the slack of an entire paycheck. I got my paycheck. They went out of business because they were corrupt and had been misusing investor funds for years before this, unbeknownst to me, and I laughed my way to the bank. I was bullied by an entire grade at one point in school. There were primary instigators, sure, but everyone else joined in at the drop of a hat. So it's fair to say I was not happy with pretty much all my peers. Well, at one point we went on a class camp trip. Everyone from our grade went. At one point a group of us went into the woods as part of a supervised activity, and almost everyone broke the rules on going out of bounds. I didn't want to cause I was a bit of a rules person, but I got attacked and physically pushed out. Of course the adults found out everyone broke the rules and started asking questions, but everyone clammed up. I ratted all of them out. No one escaped punishment. It was the nuclear blitz of ratting out. I had names. I had places they went. I had details. And they were kids, so they lied badly. So I got many of them caught in lies too. The adults chose not to believe me when I said I'd been dragged by everyone else. So I took the fall too, but it was worth it. We all lost privileges and a taste of freedom kids like us otherwise wouldn't experience again. I ruined that, and I loved every second of it. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.